Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be here today with the governor of the Banque of France, François Villeroy, and he is going to talk to us about financial technology and the state of play in France today. My name is Edward Robinson. I am a senior writer with Bloomberg News. I cover fintech out of London, and it's been fascinating to see how the fintech story is co-developing in both the UK and the continent. So without further ado, I would like to ask the governor if he could share with us what activities is the Banque of France undergoing right now to stoke fintech development, to help startups to bring these innovative breakthroughs into the banking sector in France.
So good morning, Edward, first. Or good afternoon, I don't know.
I think we just crossed over into afternoon.
If you allow me, I will say one sentence in French pour vous dire combien je suis heureux d'être là, au cœur de ce FinTech Forum. Je crois que le président Macron à Davos a parlé dans un mix d'anglais et de français. Plus modestement, je vais surtout parler anglais, qui est la langue de l'innovation, de l'international, et c'est ça le message que nous voulons porter à Paris. Mais je vous dis un mot en français qui est quand même la langue de la conviction et de l'engagement personnel pour vous dire comme la Banque de France est engagée aux côtés des FinTech. To come to your question, Banque de France is seen as a very historical institution. We are 217 years old. We are responsible for financial stability and regulation. But, I stress the but, we feel responsible for the development of a very innovative ecosystem in finance and in Paris. And to give you some very concrete actions we undertook, we created last year an ACPR, which is a French supervisor, fintech hub. We helped more than 200 innovative projects since the creation of this hub. We created within the Banque de France a lab, and I nominated a chief digital officer. We are the first central bank having a chief digital officer. This lab initiated a call for projects, and we are very pleased that 120 startups answered to our calls. We are just selecting the most relevant projects. We are working with Finance Innovations, financial cluster. We are working with Station F, and we are now working, it's new, with Wave, the financial incubator in Paris La Défense. So I don't oppose incumbents on one side and fintechs on the other side. On the contrary, and incumbents need innovation. We will probably speak about that. I feel responsible, we feel responsible for a good balance between the various actors and for a convergence between two absolute necessities. On one side, financial stability, and on the other side, financial innovation. It could seem contradictory, but the future of finance relies on this convergence.
I see. I mean, that is the trick, balancing convergence, but then also competition between the startups and the incumbents. This is a tense relationship. At times, it seems that everyone talks about collaboration between the fintechs and the banks, and you can see the value of doing that. But then we also have a lot of competitive tension, and perhaps the advent of open banking and the Payment Services Directive 2, PSD2, is really going to crystallize this collaboration/competition between these two camps. Talk to us, Governor, if you could, about how you see the financial industry as a whole addressing that challenge, that balance.
Competition is probably a too simplistic word.
Yeah.
And some people speak of cooperation and competition. When we try to think about what will happen to the financial sector as a whole, and you are right, incumbents are very important. If possible, we have a short slide which I would like to see. You just see it. Trying to see these are 5 possible scenarios for the future. You see between established players, so incumbents, and new players, and on the vertical axis, depending on the degree of disruption. And so we would go from a better bank, which would be incremental change, to a disintermediated bank, which would be a completely different landscape. Probably the future will be in between. I mentioned with the same business model, but with completely new actors. The idea, you see it on the right, of new banks. One point I would like to insist upon is that payments and data are probably the key drivers of change. And this is the two fields where, obviously, we will see disruption. We already see it. We will come to PSD2 probably on payments. If I could add for incumbents some quick considerations. First, it's true now for any financial industry. And let me stress, it's not only about banks, it's also about insurance company. Second, if I look at banks, it's for all businesses. And it's not only for retail banking, which is very often mentioned, it's also for corporate and investment banking. And it's not only for front office, it's also for middle office activities like risk management and even back office. So each incumbent needs a governance, a high-level strategy, a level of investment, an IT programmation, which is consistent with this disruption. How can we help? We study, obviously, as a supervisor, the preparation of each incumbent to the various challenges I just mentioned. We will release, till March, a first comprehensive study on the effects of digital transformation on banks and insurance. And it will be probably the most comprehensive study published at this stage by a central bank.
And that's in March?
Okay. Till March. Okay. And we decided to prepare for the next challenge, which is obviously AI, artificial intelligence. So we will create a task force with our ACPR, AMF, Fintech Forum, and with existing banks, insurers, and fintechs about what could be the future effects of artificial intelligence for all the businesses I just mentioned. This is obviously still more open than the various scenarios you see, but we want till the end of this year, so till Q4 2018, have a first analysis of the prospective effects of artificial intelligence of the financial sector, with always the same view that we have strong competitive advantages in Paris, with many of you in this audience, and we want to be one step further than the others, if possible.
So this task force that you're announcing here today on artificial intelligence in the financial services industry in France, what is the objective of this? What do you want to see on the other side of that process come out?
If I can mention quickly two objectives. One is our core business, if I may say it, but it's also the core business of financial industry CEOs. It's very important that while developing AI tools, and we will develop them, we all understand what we are doing. And we developed a strong expertise in internal models some years ago, for instance. We should develop exactly the same expertise in AI, which will help us to fulfill key duties as risk management, for instance, or scoring. And the second objective is much more open, much more prospective, but how will it change the various businesses of banks? Obviously, it's a very significant disruption for the 5 years to come.
I see. And so the biggest banks in France will be taking part in that?
And insurance.
And insurance. Don't forget insurance.
This is an invitation for all of you who are interested today.
Very good, very good. I would like to ask you, Governor, if I may, about what your view is on the cryptocurrency phenomenon. We've seen just in the last 3 months an explosion in value. Maybe we should put value in quotes. And we've seen regulators in various jurisdictions taking a number of measures to try and assess what should be done, or if anything should be done on this front. What is your view? Is cryptocurrency, this explosion, dangerous? Does something need to be done?
If you allow me, Edward, before coming to quote-unquote cryptocurrencies, let me say one word about real payments and PSD2, which you mentioned, sure. And then I will come to Bitcoin. On PSD2, it will enter into force this year, in March. This is a real progress. in order to achieve this convergence I mentioned between stability and security and innovation. So PSD2 is very welcome. I have here a call for action. We know that there is a transitory period of 18 months for PSD2 till API developed by banks become compulsory. My call for action is for banks to develop as quickly as possible, before the end of the transition period, these securitized APIs, which will allow us to put aside web scraping, which remains, let me say, a rather unsafe way of access. So if banks develop APIs earlier than the 18 months, we will foster a legal change with the government in order to make these APIs, when and where developed, compulsory. And this will be so a shortening of the transition periods for these banks, which will be a major progress in security. If I come to your question about bitcoins and other crypto assets, we should probably separate two realities. Blockchain on one side, which is a very promising reality. We at the Banque de France are testing and using blockchain. We think it will be one of the major technological disruptions for the common good. But if I come to Bitcoin, it's not a currency. It has no characteristic of a currency. It's an asset and a purely speculative one. So we prefer speaking of crypto assets, and I had the opportunity to say, I can repeat it today, that those who invest in these purely speculative assets do it at their own risks and perils. We have now a growing question, and perhaps I will conclude with that, which is about regulation. We, in France, it was an initiative by the French Minister Bruno Le Maire, and I share this view. We, in France, think that it's time for the G20 to study some elements of regulations of these crypto assets. G20, because it's an international reality, so regulation makes sense only if it's international. But we have many questions, challenges, problems raised by these crypto assets, which we need to study and perhaps probably to regulate. Let me mention financial stability, consumers' protection, and the most obvious one, which is anti-money laundering. We cannot accept that there are payments on the dark web with these crypto assets, which are prohibited and strongly regulated if we look at the classical payment system. So these are difficult issues. Again, there are many progresses and technological promises with blockchain, and we should foster them. But on the crypto asset side, let us be consistent in regulation. We cannot accept that there are two different regulatory realities for the same purpose of payments.
I see. And just with the little time we have left, I'd like to return to PSD2 for a moment, because what you've said, Governor, is that you want to see an accelerated program of API implementation, of standardization taking place with the banks, really to address the security question, which has become very, very important in the implementation of open banking. Do I understand that correctly?
Exactly. If I can be more precise, there has been worries about these transitory periods without the APIs. And it's not a secret, there were pressures, demands from financial industry, banks, to say we should delay the implementation of PSD2. We refuse this because we think we must open payments to newcomers, to fintechs, to aggregators, etc. It's a progress for technology, for competition, for the consumers. But we are conscious that this transitory period is not as safe as the end stage. So the best solution is not to delay the implementation. It will be implemented in March, but to shorten the transitory period where possible, so where the APIs are available. It's why I encourage banks to develop these safe APIs as quickly as possible, and if they have developed it, it will become compulsory for these banks and for their customers, their counterparts. So it's probably the better of the two worlds. We don't delay. On the contrary, we accelerate. And it's a very good example of positive convergence, like a cathedral, if you allow me, between technological innovation, which we need, and financial stability and data security, which we obviously need too. And the fact that we have this IT and data security is the best protection in the long run of technological innovation. If we create this idea, and I hope we all share this conviction in this room, if we create the idea that technological innovation would be at the expense of data security or of financial stability, we would threaten technological innovation. So it's very important that we keep this positive convergence.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Governor. It was a pleasure talking with you. Thank you. Please.